Okay, in this video I will talk about the MK2 edition of the FGC6. A fast comparison between the Mark II and the Mark I. Let's keep it simple. The Mark I will have the charging handle at this location, reciprocating bolts. This means in the case of the FGC6s, because it's the spring edition, that you have full control of the bolt. So if you kind of need to work the bolt itself forward because maybe the grease is getting a little bit old inside, so it goes a little bit slow forward, then you can help it a little bit. With Mark II, it's really important when you are using it that you move it back, because the charging handle is at the front. Move it back and let it go forward at its own force. So don't help it, because you only slow it down. Because this part is separate from actually the bolt. So two separate pieces. So in this case it's really important that you move it back. And the backward motion you can do it at your own pace. You can do it slow or fast. But the forward motion needs to be fast. Otherwise you will cause a misfeed in the magazine. The bolt will not fully close. Things like that. So that's really important. And that's something you can't see otherwise. Now I was kind of holding it back. And the bolt is not fully closing. And in this case, I do have to say also with the Mark I, you do want it to have a fast motion with the bolt. Otherwise you may cause a misfeed and then the bolt will not close anyways. But with this you will notice, even when you do it slow and no magazine inside, it will kind of get stuck halfway. So it needs kind of the spring force and the momentum to fully close. So you could say, okay, then you need to use stronger springs. Yeah, you could say maybe that's the case. Maybe it needs to have more spring power to move the bolt forward. Or you could say it needs to be greased better with the silicone oil. Again, I really recommend this one to use because it definitely helps a lot. I've not done a lot of testing with this model, but I've tested now. It locks back. It definitely is a lot weaker than the Mark I, because the Mark I got a bigger piston inside, because this charging handle does not push the, let's say, the piston so far back as with the Mark I. But yeah, it works. And I'm definitely, at least I'm thinking about it. You see it with the 3D printed nerf guns that they use like a cylinder that they can buy, and it's fully, of course, not 3D print, so it is nice and smooth inside. That's maybe something to look into if you really want to improve this project, and if you want to do, go ahead and let me know. Maybe I will do this also later myself, but that will be probably in the winter or something, way back, so it's not a priority for me. So if you are really into this project and you kind of like to improve it, sure, go ahead. And I think that's something to look into. So the piston can move more smoothly, get a better air seal. You probably will get more performance out of the platform without having to kind of... Now the thing is, just use a stronger spring. With everything what I say with it, returning the bolt, using a stronger spring. And probably, maybe you do want to do that with that, but with but I can also imagine when the piston is more smooth, it also helps with the bolt moving forward because there's less friction. So I think that is, to be honest, the solution to look into. But yeah, at the moment I got a lot of things to do, and this is not a priority. A lot of people want me to work on the airsoft edition, in the sense the FGC6 and the real one, like in the sense the semi-automatic gas blowback edition. this is still the prototype of it. A lot of things, really short about this one, a lot of things are working about it. The only problem I really run into is when the hammer is up, it will also push in the pin that push against the piston of the magazine, and when you insert the magazine it will cause a leak, or but I've tried with all the designs, it just don't want to get in. So you could say, okay, you always need to do first the rocking the bolt back so the hammer is down, and then insert the magazine. But I kind of wanted to mimic the real function of it, what cannot be named, I guess. So I do want to resolve that issue. Besides that, it looks like it's pretty much done. Only then, that's still kind of maybe the hard part, is kind of balancing everything out. So the hammer got enough force to push the valve in, but yet is still easy to move back when the system gets air. But that's kind of a balancing act. It's, of course, that maybe I've mentioned before in other videos, it still will use the VTech barrel and magazines. That's the same reason why the Springer used it, because I was already working on this one. But after some time I was kind of feeling like I want to make a Springer edition, because this one I've made it possible with this to shoot, but it was basically shooting as a Springer, because I needed to push it back manually every time I want to shoot again. So that's why the idea came out, well, why do I not make an actual Springer instead of wasting gas and things like that. And that's why that actually happened, to be honest. So I also picked up this paintball edition of the Mark II. So as you can imagine, you can also use bigger shrouds, then it would look something like this. You can see it's basically the same thing. But yeah, so that's an example. This is the FGC9 M shroud, so that means medium. There's also the L, the large, is a little bit larger. And you got also a really long one, I believe. No, this one. But you got also the normal FGC9 shroud, and that's like, you got only two of this stripes, and then it's kind of ends, so it's a little bit shorter again. Buttstock, the lower, is all the same as the Mark II. The only thing that's different, and you can see that with this one really clear actually, is what is now in grey. That's parts that are from the Mark II. And of course the charging was also black, but that's so you need to reprint the upper, and this upper needs to be the FGC6s edition, because it needs a little bit something different at the back part. That needs to look more like the Mark I house originally from the FGC9, to actually make it work as the Springer edition. Besides that, the shrouds are the same as from the Mark II 9 edition. This so you can just use whatever you want. And of course the rail is just the same as with the 9 edition. So with that said, how you have to make the charging handle and the shrouds with the magnet inside, that's all the same as in the manual for the FGC9 Mark II. So you can find it in a PDF. I will not really go over that one. The Allen key needs to be made in the same spec as for the FGC6s. So that's all. So the rail, the shroud and the charging handle is exactly the same how that needs to be done. When it comes down to the lower, I'm kinda not sure anymore what to say with this pin. With this lower, it likes to have this pin still in place. The pin I would say with the Mark I was only to make it able to temporarily install it, and afterwards you needed to remove it. But with this one it likes to be in place, otherwise it will not really function. It may come also because I use a different spring that gives a little bit more force, and now it does want to have that pin there in place. With the other one I have not touched it, it works, and I don't use a pin right there. Yeah, just confirming it. Yeah, I don't use a pin in that one, and if I do, it doesn't want to work. So you may need to play around with that. Maybe it's just a little bit of a print defect thing that maybe causes to want it or not want it, I'm not sure. And maybe it's a combination of the spring or something like that. I've used a couple of springs for this one, but this is nice. It's a little bit more stiff, so it pushed the shear better up. But yeah, if you really want to see those installation parts, just watch the Mark I edition. I don't want to make this movie too long. I already talked way too long, I think. Also, about the charging handle, you can just place the one in place when you install the shroud. When you are looking at the manual of the FGC6s, you can see how that's installed, but it's really easy. When you attach the shroud, you can just slide this part in, and that's all you need to do. So I will more show you now how the bolt exactly is. Again, there's some spring tension here, so and a thin plate that's kind of holding it together. So hold this buffer tube or the plate, if you don't use the back plate, that's just small. Just hold it on really good, so it's kind of supported, and also the springs are not getting in your face. Also remove your face a little bit from it, just to be sure. This one is not too bad, but and then you can pick it out. The springs are not attached to the rod, so you need to kind of hold it, otherwise it will all fall off. But besides that, you can remove it. Also, you don't place an ejector inside, it's just an empty shell at this point, with a barrel inside. Maybe this is a good moment to show you that the charging handle is just a pin. So that's just a pin that pushes against the bolt. That's all it does. So what you will be doing is pushing it back, then the shear will catch the red piece and the bolt will be moving forward. That's exactly what will happen. But yeah, because of that pin that was that's pushing against the front of the bolt, the spring needs to be different, what was pushing against the bolt on the back, than what I did with the Mark I, otherwise it would be in the way. So I changed it to two smaller springs. Those are these two. So it will just, and this is kind of tricky to align it, but also with the installation later. Okay, I see it fits now. But that's what will push against the bolt and push this one forward. Of course, the bottom one is still the same as with the Mark I. This one will be sitting here and will push the piston forward. So that's exactly what happens. For the correct sizes and things like that, just look at documentation. Installing the, let's say the BB pickup from the magazine. That's a horrible name, but I don't know how to call it actually. But this will push the BBs out of the magazine. This is just the same pin that I use with the Mark I. So you just need to make it at the right size, then use a hammer, tap it in. For me that works. It will clamp it down and it will be all fine. If you need to use some glue or something like that to make it stick there, then use some glue, but otherwise you can just tap it in and that's all you need to do. Of course, on the piston I attached some O-rings. I did use some some bison like glue that's kind of elastic glue to glue the O-rings in place in this case, because I noticed that with this the silicone oil, I have the idea that the O-rings are getting softer and therefore want to get out. So again, that is probably the thing that can be improved, is the piston design and let's say the cylinder. But as you can see, there is not really that much room to place something inside of there, but it still can be done. It is not too big. And then maybe make a really good sealing with both parts. That's probably the thing that really makes that project better. To make it better, yeah, more functional and maybe even a really good shooting platform. Now it's more for fun, but then it probably will get to the point it can be actually a good performing thing. Because the barrels are original, so that's pretty, there's nothing to complain there. But with installing the springs with this one, you don't really have to pull this one really back, because they are actually already a little bit back, shorter than the pins. So that's good. You only need to compress a little bit this spring, I believe. We will make this one assembly. Place already the screws in the butt stock and place it like this somewhere or on the side, but make sure it doesn't fall out. So you can keep your keys handy. Install the bolt, make it go forward because it wants to go anyways. With this one you could put the charging handle a little bit like this and lock it in place. So that way the bolt will be more upwards, so you can get your fingers more easily access to the bolt and things like that. What you now want to do is place it inside, and the two pins, they can move sideways, upways, things like that. So you don't have to worry too much about the spring, but it's more like aligning those two pins so they want to get in. And that can be a little bit tricky to really find the spot where they needs to be. But you will notice when you get there that you can push further down. At this point, just put your finger at the top plate and focus on this piston spring. And guide this one in the piston. Once the pin is in the piston, it will no longer do all this kind of twisting, and that can actually also cause your thing to break, the plate and the pin to fly out, things like that. So you need to be careful with that. But once it's in there, you could technically now, to relieve some spring tension, now push up the bolt a little bit and let it go to get a slide down. So it doesn't slip out again, the spring. So let it go down. Now you only have to guide this plate a little bit so it aligns. Otherwise you could also kind of go like this sideways and it doesn't want to get in. So make sure it goes in like this. So as you can see, the installation process of the Mark II with springs is a lot easier than the Mark I, because of how the springs are done. And I also have kind of updated, I believe, the springs of the Mark I, and those have been noted in the manual. The PDFs have been updated quite some few times, so keep that in mind. And there's also the spring size, things like that, is all already in the PDFs. So you can read all about it. I don't go about it in this movie, I just show you a little bit how to install it. But you can see it's a lot easier, but as you can see it also that the piston thing got some room for improvement. But yeah, that's basically it. Now it's installed. Yeah, you can see the springs there inside, so everything is fine. So yeah, now you can just install the lower. The lower can just slide in straight down, just like before. Oh, the difference with this lower is that this part is not in an angle. The normal Mark II will have this in an angle, and this will get in the way with the shear. The shear needs that space right there. So that's why it's different. So yeah, now install the 2 screws and one in the back of the butt plate. Of course, when you're opening this system up, installing it, it's a good moment to apply the grease. I did not do this, so I was kind of forgetting about it. Yeah, that's highly recommended. So really make sure that it slides forward, otherwise you will get a misfeed. And it's empty again. So yeah, that's how it works. For the barrel installation again, and this how the shears need to be done. I was not in the mood to do it all again now. Just watch the Mark I edition of this movie. I will put the link of that below. And just skip to the movie until you see the part that I work on the lower. And the shroud is basically the same. It's only different is that you now put in this part. But if you have already seen in the manual how to make the part, then you will get how to install this part. It's just sliding it in the hole, put the shroud over it. Aligning the barrel is maybe the more hard part. It's therefore more easy to first install the shroud with the barrel and the charging handle, of course, before you put in the bolt, because otherwise the bolt is pushing against the barrel and you need to kind of line that barrel a little bit before clamping it down. So that's easier when there is no pressure on the other side pressing against it. So yeah, but that's also I believe explained in the Mark I. But yeah, that's it. Hope you guys have fun with it, and if you find things to improve on it, sure, go ahead and let me know. I would like to see it. And yeah, we'll see. Maybe I do it myself later with the piston. But yeah, that's it for now, and see you guys next time.